Biden is going like one, and the Democrats are going one step further on that with this release stuff from Hunter. The New York Post stuff is, they're not even basically being asked about it when they do. I mean, one time Biden did, he just basically got mad at the guy and said, "Oh, it's a smear," and with no follow up at all. It's either Russiagate or it's a smear, but they won't get into any details because they would get caught as soon as they start answering any question. Well, is this fact correct? Did you in fact go at this time? They can't answer any of
Well,
that.
I don't know that they would actually get follow-up questions, because I think about the vice presidential debate, right?
Right.
And how the questions that were being asked to Kamala Harris, she was asked directly about what, or if, her and Joe Biden have talked about if Joe isn't able to continue on or whatever, like, and she just completely skirted around that question. The same
Right.
thing about packing the court, completely skirting around it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like that's just what they've been doing. And
Yeah.
the fact that people don't see that they don't want to directly answer these questions, there's
Right.
a reason why they're not answering these questions directly.
Right, and you're right. It does. It fell to, in those cases, Pence, and some cases vice versa. Kamala Harris had to tell Pence when he didn't answer questions. It kind of fell to them to, at the beginning of their next response, say, "Well, first I got to address what Kamala
Right.
didn't just answer." Right. Yeah, there's a real boldness to them not wanting to answer the pack in the court question. And in the Boston Globe today, Michael Cohen just came out and said, "Hey, if Dems win, they have to pack they have to go ahead and add 4 more liberal judges,
See?
and they have
We
to do
have
this."
to.
Yeah,
We have to. You
literally
see
saying
how
we
people
have to do
call
it.
for these things. It's
Right.
so
Yeah.
crazy.
Right.
People are so nuts. It's
Yeah.
like, it's really, they're living in bizarro world,
Right.
and that's why people say that we really are living in George Orwell's 1984, because it's double speak. It's like what's black is white, what's up is down, what's
Oh, it's crazy.
it's the opposite. Everything that you should not be calling for.
Right.
And that's why, like, now the left is really being seen as the authoritarians. It's so crazy, but it's
Right.
really true how the left is really, they're calling for more censorship. They are calling for, lockdowns. They are calling for mandates. They're calling, these are things that should not be called, but it's because the media tells you this is the right thing to do. And if you don't do this, then you're a bad person, or what's wrong with you? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's always
Well,
pitting us
I
against each
see
other like that.
almost all of it driven by Trump derangement syndrome. That it's so, you are so excommunicated if you talk against the prevailing wisdom, that Trump is Hitler. If you start from the premise that Trump is Hitler, it justifies anything. And that's where all this comes from. And people are they're afraid of saying something that might be perceived as being pro Trump, like,
Yeah.
even if it comes down to something as ridiculously normal as, maybe we shouldn't change the nature of the Supreme Court so drastically by adding multiple justices to tip the balance, because
Yeah.
within 2 decades we'll have 100 justices on the Supreme Court if this goes back and
Right.
forth.
Right.
And to me, it all comes from Trump derangement syndrome, which I think was a purposeful um, uh, method by Democrats and by their media and so forth, to allow them to take any action at all, essentially without questioning, without consequences, basically.
Right. Right.
I mean, if Trump is Hitler, right? It's that whole, like, would you go in a time machine and go back and shoot Hitler, right, before he rose to power? If Trump is Hitler, it validates any kind of rigging of primaries, right? Any kind of having a impeachment, even if it's not justified, even if the FBI is holding information that is counter to that impeachment,
Hmm.
and rigging a general election, it validates that.
Yep.
That's kind of where I think we're at.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
I totally agree with that. And I think that, I think that's one of the reasons why all the polling is totally off, because I think that a lot of people, much like in 2016, they are
Mhm.
going to vote for Trump, but they're not going to admit it. They're not going to say it beforehand because they don't want the backlash from it.
So
And
another, and related to that, another interesting thing is, I think I've talked about this before. The Real Clear Politics has like a mega list of a meta list of the betting sites, and the betting sites in the past week have gone like 5 point swung towards Trump. It's now at like 60-40. Um, and they were accurate in 2016 as of the day of the election. They were like 97% chance Trump winning.
Mhm.
So basically what I say is when they actually have their money on the line, if the people setting the rates, um, percentages for betting get it wrong, they lose a whole bunch of money, right, in payouts. So basically, they consider everything in doing that, and politics is almost doesn't matter to them. It's basically all about what's the information coming out right now. And I think this Biden stuff, the Hunter stuff, is absolutely hurting Biden.
but not to lose what we're talking about with this censorship thing,
Right.
and with the whole media thing.
Yep.
I think the bigger picture of this whole thing is that, much like the Trump derangement syndrome, these are just media manipulation tools. That's just a tool that they use for a certain outcome. But the bigger
Right.
picture is always that the media has shown itself to just be a PR. Like, it's not the third estate or the fourth estate anymore. It's
Right.
not. It's just running propaganda PR for governments. And anything that comes out from the media
Yep.
has to be scrutinized in that way, because if you think about this as, we have to look at it as the forest, not just the trees. Trump
Right.
derangement syndrome is a tree. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
The forest is that there is a master manipulation being done, right? And it's not to say that they're doing it with the purpose of, I think it's just it's about power,
Right.
and the way that how do you control a mass?
Yep.
You control them by, first of all, dumbing them down. You censor the information that they get, right? You crack down on them, because it's not just a matter of, like, for a lot of these people that they've lost their channels or whatever, that's their money, like that's
Right.
their source of income. you
Right.
you
Shut them
really fuck
down.
them
Sure.
over,
Right.
when it comes to stuff like that. Or, again, how you have the whole thing with Julian Assange. I can't get over that, simply because Julian Assange is not a US citizen, and he is going to be tried in a US court for US laws.
Hmm.
That, if people do not see that, if they can do that to him, they can do that to you. They can do it to anyone.
Right.
If they're going back now and they are, if they're giving strikes to channels for stuff that they did months ago, that means that they're scrubbing certain things.
Sure.
And this whole thing with Hunter Biden, it's just another thing where now they'll probably look and see anybody who's posting anything about this. Well, then they have to shadow ban any of those videos. They're going to give them strikes. They're probably going to take down channels,
Hmm.
and it's just so that there's only certain information that gets filtered out to the people, and
Hmm.
that's the only acceptable information. And if we are going to allow for this to happen, that we only get acceptable information, then
Mm.
we've lost already. That's it. We're done.
Right.
There is no going forward.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I essentially I essentially have got to the point where I'm like, I think it's critical to essentially for the Dem party to end as it currently exists. Now that could happen it could physically end. It could go by the way the Whigs, to be replaced with, I would believe, a more progressive would fill the vacuum. A more progressive party would fill the vacuum. Um, or the people that are ancient and causing all the problems, the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden, that they could essentially retire if they're thoroughly humiliated in this election for having, I mean, if you do analysis post this election and Biden will lose, it would be like the guy had 8% support coming out of New Hampshire, and Kamala Harris never had any support really in terms of delegates or proving herself. And the guy was, obviously had dementia through or some definitely age issues, age cognition issues. I don't know. It could just be that out of shame, they just fold up. They just say that's it. They're done. Rather, but who knows?
I know,
I
but see, that's
critical
the
that
thing. It's
something.
like I don't know what the answer is, because just getting rid of all of these people, I think that we should just get rid of everybody in in
Yeah,
um, in Congress. But
yeah,
if we don't have a checks and balances, it doesn't matter who comes in next, because they are also going to be susceptible to, whatever, corruption or whatever is going
but
on.
I'm not sure that they would immediately inherit what I see as this web of power that I think the DNC Dems essentially have right now. I think they essentially,
But I
uh,
think you're tying that to the people, whereas
right,
I'm tying it to, there's a system, there is an infrastructure. That's the
right, right,
thing.
right,
There
right.
is an infrastructure set in place that allows for these things to happen.
So
And
you're
that's
you're almost
why
thinking that.
they get to the point they get
So
to.
you're thinking that if a real progressive, well-meaning party came into essentially replace the Dems, then the military-industrial complex CIA, which is pulling the strings of the media propaganda, would probably just switch over the Republicans. Whoever
They
comes
would
in,
infiltrate. They
yeah,
would
yeah,
infiltrate
they
in some
find the
sort of
right
way,
people. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because of
yeah,
the fact that we really don't have a checks and balances. We don't have,
yeah.
like, the fact that, the executive branch and the legislative branch and the judicial branch, they're all supposed to be even, but they're not, right?
Right,
It's very weighted in certain areas, and it's all because the majority of things happen in back rooms. If you look at even the big thing that happened with Nancy Pelosi, where she she went off on Wolf Blitzer, right?
oh man, that
Um,
was great.
where she kept saying, "You don't know what is happening in these discussions, in these meetings, right?
Right,
You don't know." It's funny how these people who aren't in the room want to give an opinion. She kept saying that, right?
right,
And it's
right,
because we don't know what the hell is going on. There's a
right.
lot of shit that goes on that is set up this way. And the way that Wolf Blitzer was saying that she should just call the president and do all this stuff. The problem is that that's how they've set things up, is that the president, it does not need to be involved in these things. He has a representative who is involved. That's how they do it.
Right,
He sends a representative to go and try to broker out a deal or whatever between
yeah,
the two parties, right? It's just the same way as how, in the House, right? We can't get anything presented or, any traction behind certain bills. Why? Because if Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to bring it to the floor, well then Nancy Pelosi doesn't have to bring it to the floor. These are
exactly.
things. This is the system. It's
Right,
not Nancy Pelosi specifically. They're just
yeah,
taking advantage. The same thing with Mitch McConnell. Everything that he's doing now, it's all taking advantage of the system that they have already set up,
hmm,
right? And that they will continue to do. All you're going to do if you change the people is you're going to change the players. That's it. And
right,
maybe
right,
at
right,
first we'll get some people that really do have that drive to, work for the people and all this kind of stuff. Yes, but we're all human beings, and unfortunately,
yeah,
because human beings, we're fallible, we're corruptible,
right,
and that's just how it's going to work. So unless we have ways of making sure, of ensuring, holding people accountable, then
yeah,
that's not going to change. And no one's looking at how to hold people accountable, right?
hmm,
That's the problem.
hmm,
Everybody
hmm,
just looks at, no, we just need to change whoever it is. No, we need to look past that. We need to, I'm very much the type of person, like, even when I wanted to study medicine, I always looked at it as, I don't want to just treat a problem. I want
hmm,
to get to the root of the problem,
hmm,
right? And
hmm,
that's how I look at it, that our government, it's malignant. It's like end stage, right? But
right.
in order to be able to move on, we need to look at the systemic issues, not just the person. I don't like Nancy Pelosi. To say
Right.
it, I think she is super
Yeah.
corrupt, but she is not. the problem. Just like
Yeah,
Trump
I agree.
wasn't the problem,
Yeah,
right?
most likely whoever. I mean, it's it's the lesson of AOC. I mean, I just had this complete feeling this is his breath of fresh air, and she started out doing everything right. When she reported on that the freshman conference where basically
Yeah.
they learn everything, and she live streamed it and all that. She's like, "There's nobody here from environmental resources. There's nobody here from. It's all corporations trying to lock us down." And then yeah, she got absorbed into the Borg.
Because
Um,
that's because she has to in order to
right.
play.
Yeah.
She has to, she wasn't going to be able. She would have been ousted the first in her first election. She would have been ousted because,
Sure.
and that's why she went and she ended up lining up with Nancy Pelosi, was because they started running. I think like 11 people against her,
Yeah.
and they were well funded people, right? And so it was
But
just it was a much harder path for her.
if you really wanted to make a difference, though, wouldn't it be best to expose all that, even if it means you lose your seat, versus take a seat to do ill for the country, right?
Hey, I agree, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I always think that it's very nice to say what you would do if you
Right.
were in the situation,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
if you were in the situation, who knows what you would do,
Right.
But
There's human
self-interest,
pressures.
self-preservation
Yeah.
it overcomes everything the majority of the time. But
Right.
I was one that yes, I did like AOC, but I never jumped on that bandwagon because
Yeah.
I saw her for who she was. I saw how much popularity she was gaining, and that immediately it set off something to me. When
Yeah.
you see that so many people, you have so many, especially so many social justice people
Mm.
backing you,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's just like no. And then it's just this whole like yes queen and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
All of
Right.
that
Right.
turns me off bad, like real bad. I
Yeah.
I I see I start seeing that stuff, and I think to myself, like, no, even how everybody talks about the squad now, that the squad is expanding and all this kind of. Listen, these people, the squad, they are not superhuman. They are not superheroes. They are just regular folk. And
Yeah.
guess what? They're not doing shit for you because
Yeah.
they
Just
haven't done shit.
you can search on Twitter or something by basically putting in their search term and then putting in open bracket from and then put the person's like tag. See how much these people are posting about free Assange. It's they're not.
Right.
They're not pushing. I mean, these critical final days, like you say, it ended, but of his trial, whatever, like that, extradition proceedings, um, they were not supporting him. So I just don't know what that says. It's heartbreaking.